Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new session with Rights and Responsibilities Awareness Initiative. Today, we have Constable Tracey Jackson from London Police Service to talk to us about the intimate partner violence and the criminal harassment. Tracey, thank you very much for being here today. We are looking forward for this presentation.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here and be able to share the information that I have here. So I just want to start.
Please go ahead.
Okay. I just want to start with the fact that it is now called intimate partner violence. It used to be domestic violence, and they didn't feel that was accurately reflecting the relationships that are covered in that. And the reason that I do this presentation, a little bit about me. I've been a police officer with London for about 20 years. And so I come across a lot of these investigations and worked in intimate partner violence in the unit that we have for about 4 years. And I think that there is a lot of fear and a lot of misunderstanding about what goes into an intimate partner violence investigation when the police are showing up. So it's already a scary and traumatic situation for everybody involved. And then the police show up, and that can be very scary and traumatic for people just having the police come to their door. So it was important to me that we do some outreach and sort of grab the bull by the horns, and let's take some of the fear out of what that investigation looks like. So I'm just going to go through a few things here that may be part of a London Police investigation into intimate partner violence. So these are the things I'm going to talk about. I'm going to give you some of the statistics. What is an intimate relationship to make it intimate partner violence? What healthy relationships are, what unhealthy relationships are, the cycle of abuse, the stages of change of behavior, the purpose of the investigation when the police show up, the realities of what that investigation can look like. And I'm going to talk a little bit about stalking behavior, because that's one that's very misunderstood. I'm going to talk to you about the Victim Bill of Rights and resources you can consider. And then I'm going to give you my information at the end. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me at London Police, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So often you'll hear officers refer to intimate partner violence investigations, or if they're talking about an intimate partner violence situation, by saying she as the victim. Now, we do know that men suffer in these situations as well, but these are some statistics from Canada that talk about intimate partner violence and how women are more often the victims and suffer more serious injuries. So women are 3 times more likely to suffer injury, 5 times more likely to receive medical attention, 4 times more likely to be victims of an intimate partner homicide. 79% of intimate partner homicides are women that are victims. Police reported intimate partner violence rates are highest among the ages of 25 to 34. Intimate partner violence was one of the most common kinds of violence experienced by women. 45% of the victims are aged 15 to 89. Female perpetrators of violence in those situations are more likely to be defending themselves. And those are from Stats Canada from 2018. So just to give you an idea of how common it is for women to suffer in those situations, not to say that it doesn't happen, as I say, to men and in same-sex couples for sure. These things do go on in other places, but it's certainly something that is concerning most commonly with women being the victims. So what is an intimate relationship? So for it to meet the threshold where the province has said people are most likely to wind up dead, in situations that are intimate partner violence. And they've said, so if that's what it is, the police no longer have the discretion to walk away from that situation where they used to have that. It used to be that if nobody wanted charges laid, that we didn't have to lay charges. And I'm talking like 30 years ago. And certainly, like if Heatham and I got into an argument and we got pushing and shoving each other and the police showed up, we could say, oh, we just got heated over something. By morning, we'll be best friends again. It's no problem. We don't want police involved. And the police could walk away from that because Heatham and I are just friends. But if it's a relationship, we no longer can walk away as police. The province has taken away that discretion because of the safety risk. So for it to be considered an intimate partner relationship, it includes current and former dating or common law and married couples. It's being defined as a person whom one has a close personal romantic relationship with that can be characterized by the following, but does not need all of these things. So it has emotional connectedness, regular contact, ongoing physical contact and or sexual behavior. They identify as a couple, familiarity and knowledge about each other's lives. So just think about what intimate means to you, and it's all of those things. So what doesn't it cover? That doesn't cover human trafficking. Human trafficking is not considered an intimate relationship because that is someone who's in a position of exploitation over someone else. It doesn't cover if you were, say, being stalked by someone that you have no relationship with. Not to say that that's something, again, like obviously we would still be taking that seriously as a police investigation, but it doesn't meet the threshold of intimate partner violence. So when we talk about relationships, this is something that I shift into because when we talk about, we spend a lot of time talking about what an unhealthy relationship looks like for intimate partner violence. So let's start with what a healthy relationship looks like. And it is all of these things. It is equality in the relationship. There's communication. There are boundaries. You can feel comfortable to say no to something because you feel uncomfortable and your partner respects that about you. You trust each other. There's honesty, there's accountability, there's responsibility, there's support, there's respect, and that is all housed in a relationship that does not have violence attached to it. So if you think about your own relationships and you think about what a healthy relationship is, it's all of those things. So when we move to unhealthy relationships, it switches to being a cycle of power and control. And there's an element of violence. It can be physical, it can be sexual, and there is everything in this wheel can happen, or even just a few things. And when you're looking at this, you may think of relationships you've had in the past that were starting to head down that road. Maybe you've been a victim. Maybe you know someone who is a victim. So I'm just going to take a minute to read them all so that you can hear them out loud and think about, okay, that's a situation that I've been in before. I've seen someone that I care about have to deal with. Intimidation. And this lists them all as her, as the victim. It's from the Duluth model, and they adopt the her as the victim. Using intimidation, making her afraid, using looks, actions, or gestures, smashing things, destroying her property, abusing pets, displaying weapons. Emotional abuse, putting her down, making her feel bad about herself, calling her names, making her think she's crazy, making her feel guilty for making decisions. Using isolation, controlling what she does and who she sees and talks to, and what she reads and where she goes, limiting her outside involvement, using jealousy to justify actions. Minimizing, denying, and blaming. So this is talking about when abuse has happened and she's talking about it with her partner. Makes light of the abuse, not taking her concerns about it seriously. Saying the abuse didn't happen, shifting responsibility for abusive behavior, saying she caused it. Using children, making her feel guilty about the children, using children to relay messages, using visitation to harass her, threatening to take the children away. Oftentimes we will also see there that if you call the police, well, if Children's Aid gets involved, they're going to take your children away. And that is not the case. Children's Aid, that is a last resort for Children's Aid. And they really want to be able to help you be able to keep children in the home. So it's certainly not a truth that that if Children's Aid gets involved, that the police are going to take the children away and take them to Children's Aid. Using male privilege, treating her like she's a servant, making all the big decisions, acting like the master of the castle, being the one to define men's and women's roles in the relationship and in the household. Using economic abuse, preventing her from getting or keeping a job, making her ask for money, giving her an allowance, taking her money, not allowing her to know about or have access to the family income. Using coercion and threats, making and or carrying out threats to do something to hurt her, threatening to leave her, threatening to commit suicide, to report her to welfare, making her drop charges, making her do illegal things. So then we move on to what the cycle of abuse is. So you start in the green stage and you'll go back to the green stage, which is the honeymoon period. So the green stage, when you first meet that person, you feel happy about the relationship, you feel hopeful, you're maybe seeing some jealousy at that point, but it's an attractive quality, you feel wanted, you feel like they care about you and where you're going because they always want to know these things. And then it moves into walking on eggshells, where the abuser is nitpicking, moody, putting the person down, yelling, threatening, criticizing, playing mind games, intimidating, isolating, destroying property, withdraws that affection that they first were giving, blaming and embarrassing the victim, constant arguments. And then you hit the red stage, where there is an actual sexual, psychological, physical abuse, use of a weapon, hitting, choking, humiliation. You see sexual assault at that point. Verbal abuse can even be just the maximum at that stage for some people, but often it's much, much more than that. So that will happen, and then you don't know what to do because you're in a relationship with this person and this has never happened before. And then the next day, green stage, makes promises, sends flowers, declares love, says I'm sorry, blames their upbringing or their parents or others. I was stressed at work. I don't know what came over me. Present, begs for forgiveness. Never do it again is a big thing. I'll never do it again. And so the victim stays, but then you roll back into the yellow stage, all the things start happening again, and then you get to the red stage again. And over and over and over this happens. We have heard from victims who have lived through this, and you can see there that it says show this cycle of abuse occurs an average of 35 times before the police are called. Before we even show up there, this has happened to this victim 35 times. So, and we have heard from victims that they would do something if they knew some good thing was coming up, a wedding or a family function, and they wanted to be in the green stage at the family function. They would do something before the family function or the wedding or whatever it is. Before that time shows up, they would do something to cause the red stage to happen so that they could be in the green stage when they were at the thing they wanted to be in a good place at, which is a really sad way of having to manage that. And you can imagine how sad and traumatic that reality is for that victim. So that brings us to, why doesn't she leave? That's a question that people who don't understand what happens in a violent relationship don't understand why she doesn't leave. And there's loads of reasons why staying seems like the right thing to do, and how the change in behavior is a spiral stage thing that happens. So she will relapse and stay. There'll be a maintenance phase where they're keeping the relationship going. There'll be some sort of action that happens in that relationship. Could be a red stage, cycle of abuse situation. And then they start to prepare for when this happens next time, maybe I'm going to leave. And they start thinking about leaving and how they're going to get away. And then there's a relapse. So those are the way that things happen, that she has to go through that cycle, or he, the victim, has to go through that cycle to consider the ways that they can get out, to make a plan for leaving before they can get out. And there's often a lot of relapse because, you know, I'm sorry comes up, I'll never do it again. Maybe there's children involved, families are involved. There's a lot involved for the victim to be walking away from that is on their mind all the time and considering. But that's in a nutshell. I hope that helps with some understanding of why she doesn't go. So the purpose of an investigation, if the police get called, sometimes we get called by the neighbor and we show up and the victim had no idea we were even coming. Sometimes the victim will call themselves and then they at least have some preparation that we're going to be showing up there. But the purpose of the investigation, for when the police come to the door, when I'm knocking on the door, the purpose for me is, first of all, to prevent any further abuse. So I want that situation to stop for the victim. I want to ensure the safety of everybody in the house. Particularly, I want to protect children that are there. So when we come to the door, we have to come in. You can't come to the door and crack the door open and say, no, we're fine. We don't want you here, and hope we'll go away, because we can't go away at that stage. Somebody in the house could be hurt and somebody could need us. So we have to come in the house. We have to see everyone that's in the house, and just make sure that everyone doesn't need medical care, doesn't need help to leave the residence if that's what they want to do that night. So we offer support. That's private when we offer that. So we will separate the two parties that are fighting. So the accused and the victim will be separated, which is hard for some people in some cultures. I can say with certainty that that's very difficult for women in certain cultures to be alone in a room with a male officer and now be separated from her husband and be asked about what just happened here tonight and why we're there. That's a terrifying, huge mountain of all kinds of issues to have to get over to be able to talk to the officer about something that might have happened that evening. But that's the way it goes. And we can't control who comes to the door. We do have more women officers than we've ever had, but it's luck of the draw as to who is the first responding officer. It may be two men. So one officer will take one of the parties to somewhere and ask what happened. One officer will separate the other party and ask what happened, to try and get to the bottom of the events of the evening, and if anybody needs some kind of help. The very last thing on the list for us is successful prosecution, which means that phrase means that this goes to court and we win at court. That's not a huge concern for the police. Our threshold for laying those charges is that we have reasonable grounds that something happened here. Our threshold is not whether or not we can win this in court. And I know that's different in other countries. That's how it is in Canada. It doesn't matter to us if this is going to win or lose in court. Our threshold stops at, if we have reasonable grounds to believe this happened, somebody's going to jail. So moving on from there, I just want to talk about stalking behavior a bit. I know that's a lot of words on your screen because there's some misunderstanding about when you can call the police for criminal harassment. I've talked to victims who have described criminal harassment in a nutshell that they've been living with for months and sometimes years. And I say to them, that's criminal harassment. And they're like, oh, I had no idea. So criminal harassment is against the law in this country. No person shall, without lawful authority, knowing that the other person is harassed or recklessly as to whether that person is harassed, engage in conduct referred to in section 2, which is the next part I'm going to read there, that causes the other person reasonably in all circumstances to fear for their safety or for the safety of anyone known to them. So the person can't do these things in section 2. Repeatedly follow from place to place the other person or anyone known to them. Repeatedly communicating with, either directly or indirectly, the other person or anyone known to them. Besetting or watching the dwelling house or place where the other person or anyone known to them resides, works, carries on business, or happens to be, or engaging in threatening conduct directed at the other person or any member of their family. So if the woman has a new partner and the ex is following even the new partner around, followed him to the grocery store, followed him to the coffee shop after that, followed him all the way back to the house that they have together. That is criminal harassment. If it's making people afraid for their safety, that's criminal harassment. It doesn't even have to be repeated if the person is watching the house that you live in. If you look outside and they're sitting across the street in their car and they've been sitting there for a couple hours watching your house to see if you have new people coming over, or even just to see what you're doing, to see if you're home, even one time doing that, that's a criminal harassment charge. They don't have to have a warning, that's it. Engaging in threatening conduct, that can be any host of things. They're repeatedly communicating with, if they leave enough messages that they fill up your answering machine on your phone so that you can't get messages from anybody else, or you have to shut your phone off because it's constantly ringing and you can't get anything done, and it's making you afraid for your safety, this charge can apply. There is the element of fear. You have to be fearful for your safety for criminal harassment to apply. But there are other charges like harassing phone calls that takes that fear element away. That is in the criminal code, harassing phone calls. So there is a lot of behavior that we see that people are putting up with and having to live with in their reality because they don't realize they can call the police about it. And I would encourage you, if you know someone that's living in this situation, or if you're dealing with it yourself, even if you're not sure if it really meets the definition of somebody getting charged, certainly call the police and ask us. We would be happy to get to the bottom of it for you. Intimate images. This is a new one on the scene the last 10 years or so. So if you send pictures of yourself in a relationship to that person, you can reasonably expect that that person keeps those images and doesn't show them to anyone else. And if they do, they can be found guilty of an offense in the Criminal Code of Canada under section 162.1. It's an offense to knowingly publish, distribute, transmit, sell, or make available or advertise an intimate image of a person, knowing that person depicted in the image did not consent or being reckless as to consent. So if you send intimate images of yourself to someone who's an ex-boyfriend and they're threatening to show your family unless you get back together with them, that's an offense under the criminal code. Please call the police. And if you don't want to call the police, you want this to go away, but you do want some kind of document from the court, you can get a Section 810 peace bond. It's the Canadian version of the American restraining order. And Section 810 peace bonds have been amended to include fear of commission of this offense. So normally the peace bond or restraining order comes after something has happened. But in the case of intimate images, if you wanted that peace bond, so signed by justice of the peace, and makes that person stay away from you, not communicate with you, and not do these things before it even happens because you have fear that they will do that, you can get one of those. You come down to the courthouse, you speak to a justice of the peace, and you give them the information that you have. If there's enough information there that the justice of the peace sees what's happening there, you get a peace bond and away you go. So, as I said earlier, in a thorough investigation, officers are mandated by the province that they shall lay charges if reasonable grounds exist. If children are present in the home, Children's Aid, CAS, is given a call. This does not mean the children are going to be apprehended by CAS. CAS is often reaching out after that to make sure that parent, victim, and children who've been through a traumatic experience have the support that they need to get through that traumatic experience, be it counseling or whatever they might need to feel supported through that situation. And CAS reaches out to make sure that everybody feels safe and that they have all the things they need to be safe in their home. The accused may be released. So just because we bring somebody to jail doesn't mean they stay there. We're a very liberal country. There's like 300,000 people in the States at any given time in prison. It is not like that in Canada. Canada likes to have people have another chance to do the right thing and be out in society on conditions that they agree to follow. So somebody can go to jail overnight or maybe for 2 or 3 days, and then they will often get out with conditions that commonly include no communication or contact with the victim. So directly or indirectly means they can't call you, they can't come to your place, they can't send you a Facebook message, they can't send flowers to your house, they can't have any friend of theirs do any of those things on their behalf. Have friend call up and say, oh, so-and-so says he really misses you, he says he's sorry. That's an indirect communication and that's a breach of those conditions. So they also can't go to the residence. Employment or that should say education, employment and occupation are both the same thing. Employment or education. So if it's somewhere you go to school or somewhere you work, they can't come to those places either. And not to be within 25 meters of the person of you. So if you both happen to be out in the same public space, say in a grocery store or in a park, they would have to stay 25 meters away from you. If the accused is held for court, victim input is desired. So they go to jail overnight, they're going to court in the morning. The bail safety unit with London Police and the Victim Witness Assistance Program, it's VWAP on the screen there, are both going to be reaching out to the victim that day to get input from the victim about this situation. How are you feeling today? Are you wanting to continue this conversation? Where are you at with being supported with counseling? This was a traumatic experience. Are you afraid of this individual? Do you think that there's going to be new issues if they do release him? Do you think he'll respect the conditions? Does he need counseling, addiction counseling, anger management? What do you think should happen in this situation going forward? The Crown really likes for the victim to have a voice going into court about where they want this to go. They've really tried to put some power and control back into the victim's hands as far as how this gets handled in court. It is a lot for a victim to go through when they've had a traumatic experience the night before. Sometimes it's 4 in the morning. And then Victim Witness Assistance Program and Bail Safety are both calling by 9 a.m. And wanting to ask some really in-depth and direct questions, but it certainly goes a long way in the courtroom if there's that voice there. So, and that is all because of the Canadian Victim Bill of Rights. So this is something that not a lot of people know about as well. I don't think it gets enough publication. Victims have rights in Canada. They have the right to information. You have the right to request information if you're the victim of a crime. about the criminal justice system and your role as a victim, about the services and programs that are available to you, about the status and outcome of the investigation that you're involved in, about the date, time, and location of proceedings in relations to the offense, and any reviews relating to the offender's conditional release and the timing and conditions of that release. You have the right to protection. You have the right to your security and privacy being considered by the appropriate authorities in the criminal justice system. You have the right to have measures taken to protect you from intimidation and retaliation. You have the right to request that your identity be withheld from the public. You have the right to request testimonial aids when appearing as a witness in court. So that means if you're afraid of this individual and you don't want to sit in the same room as them because that's terrifying, you can ask to be on closed circuit TV so that they can see you, because they have the right to see who their accuser is in court. They can see you, but you don't have to look at them. You're in a room by yourself, being projected into the courtroom so that you have a measure of safety doing that. You have the right to participation. You have the right to present a victim impact statement and have it taken into consideration. And you have the right to share your views on decisions that affect your rights. So as I was saying, they want you to have a voice in how this goes through the court. You have the right to restitution. So restitution helps pay for financial losses. So that can be anything. So if they broke your phone and you want them to pay for that, you can ask for that. If they broke a bunch of stuff in the house and you've had to pay to have that repaired, you can ask for help with those payments. So to file a restitution order as a civil court judgment if the offender fails to pay. So you have the right to ask for all those things as a victim. And like I say, I don't think that it gets enough airtime that victims have these rights. So these are some resources to consider if you or anyone you know is dealing with anything that I've talked about today, and you aren't at the point where you want to call police. There are other resources available to you. Or if you are dealing with police, these are resources that probably have been given to that victim, but I certainly want to make everybody aware of them. So St. Joseph's Hospital in London has a sexual assault and domestic violence center, open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So if you have a traumatic injury as a result of a sexual assault or domestic violence, you can consider attending there. There is a crisis intervention and victim support unit. That's through London Police. And they are available for attending scenes of crime and tragedy, crisis intervention. They do referrals, they do safety planning, they do home safety audits. So that's something that we refer out when if there's been a breakdown in a relationship and you're afraid that the person's going to come back to the house and they still have a key, or you don't know where the keys are, they can help you, for example, get the locks changed, or put shatter alarms on the windows. So if the window gets broken, the alarm will go off and you have some warning about that person trying to get into your house, that you can get somewhere safe and call the police to come and help you. Just little things that you can do to make yourself feel safe again in your own home. Victim Service of Middlesex, London helps again with victims of crime or traumatic circumstances, provides them with support, referrals to available programs and services, because that's definitely a traumatic incident that you don't want rolling around in your brain forever. And there are services out there to help you reconcile what's happened. Al-Anon, often these situations come about with people having addiction issues, so that's available. ANOVA is the Women's Community House. They provide shelter if you need shelter, which isn't something that's the right choice for everybody, but it is available. And I say it like that because I know that women who have gone to shelters feel that police will sort of blasé say, well, just go to a shelter. And I want people to know that I understand that that is not the right choice for everybody, and that that is a very distressing state to have to be in. But it is out there as a resource if people need it. The same with the London Abused Women's Centre. The Blue Victims booklet is something that police bring with them to intimate partner violence investigations, and they leave it with the victim. And it has all of this resource information in it for the victim to look at their leisure. When this has all happened, it's a lot of information to take in. So we leave it with them so that next day, day after, they at least have some information at their fingertips that they can reach out if they need. And this is something new, newer, the Independent Legal Advice for Survivors of Sexual Assault Program. So at the bottom of your screen is how to access the program. And it is free legal advice. So the program works as, it's free legal advice provided by phone or video chat. Eligible victims receive a voucher and a list of lawyers to choose from. The voucher provides 2 hours of legal advice. If the victim requires more time, they can ask for an additional 2 hours. In Toronto, survivors who identify as women and people with non-binary gender identity who would benefit from centered space can access the program at the Barbara Schiffler Commemorative Clinic. And the lawyer will only provide legal advice, not representation. This program is available to women, men, trans and gender diverse people. Victims of sexual assault are eligible if they are 16 years of age and live in Ontario, and the sexual assault happened in Ontario. And there's no time limit on that. Any time after the incident, regardless of how much time has passed. So if you don't know what's going to happen, you're a victim of this, or you know someone who's a victim, and it's such a big, huge thing to wonder about how that's going to go if it goes to court. The accessing the program is at the bottom of the page there. Certainly reach out, and those people can give great information about that. So as I said, I'm available for questions at any time. I feel very strongly about supporting people who are in this position that are victims of this type of crime. So I'm available. That's my email. That's the non-emergency number. And then whoever answers that phone can get a message to me to get back to you if you have questions that I can help answer. And I hope this has been helpful.
Thank you very much, Tracey, for this. This has been very helpful. I do actually have a question. What about the victims that they have some kind of language barriers? Would anyone be there, could be available to chat with a different language than English or French?
We do have a small number of officers. We're doing our best to hire officers that have more diverse backgrounds so that we have more representation from the community that we're trying to serve. And so we do have a handful of officers that do speak other languages. So that being said, like this is a twofold situation. Like if it's first responders coming, as I said before, like even if you're hoping it's a woman you're going to get to talk to, it could be 2 men that show up. The chances of getting somebody that speaks a language that you'd be most comfortable with in a first response situation might be difficult. But that doesn't mean they're going to walk away and not do their very best to help that situation be understood. So in a first response situation, that can mean asking a family member to translate. They will call over the air to see if anyone in the city working that day speaks the language that's needed. If it's a reporting after the fact, then we have a little more time to find a translator. And we certainly do have better access to translators after the fact. So going to court, translators are available to support victims at any stage of the court process.
Thank you very much. This is really so great to know. So thank you very much, Tracey. It has been an honor to have you again with Rights and Responsibilities Awareness Initiative, and we are looking forward for more sessions to educate people about their rights and responsibilities and help them be better members of this great community. Thank you very much for all of that nice effort and all of that wonderful information, and we are looking forward to collaborate more on this.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to it as well. As I say, I feel very strongly about providing support for victims in this area, and anything I can do to help, and any questions you might have, I'm here to help.
Thank you very much, and have yourself a wonderful evening.
You as well.
Thanks.